what you said, and I would then be able to map the room, map you so I could then put you in the right constellation, put you in the right subgroup, so that it would be easier for you to practice change for the sake of human relationship. And it's all in this one book, the cookbook on humans. He says the individual, this is Kurt Lewin, accepts the new system. Look at it, it's a system, it's a way of thinking of values and beliefs by accepting belongingness to the group. One of Rick Warren's pastors says, if you have 7 friends in the church, no matter how corrupt it gets, you will not leave. Then he says, working through the resistance to change is the key to the production of change. Why do you refuse to change? Is because you have the truth. Why would you move away from a rock and step on shifting sand? I call this rock-crushing territory. He must help the patient solidify the change. He must encourage generalization of the change from the group setting into the patient's larger life environment. So it's not enough for me to take your minister off to a conference, get him to put aside his standards for the group approval. He has to also learn it enough so that when he comes back, he will practice it in the culture that he came from, called the church. And then I point this out because this has happened all across our nation. A patient might, with further change, outgrow his spouse unless concomitant changes occur in the spouse. So you better make sure everybody's in the process. And by the way, it doesn't guarantee there won't be a separation and divorce because contracts don't mean anything after you've been through this process. You might have multiple partners. And then a book, Bloom mentions this book as his worldview. In page 166, Erich Fromm, Escape from Freedom. Fromm writes, the family thus may be considered the psychological agent of society. Family organization is the nucleus of all social organization. Adorno talks about the power relationship between the parents. In other words, the husband's to rule, the desire of the heart of the wife is to the husband, children obey your parents and Lord. And he talks about the domination of the subject family by the father or by the mother, and then the relations of the children, how they behave out in the community. Adorno acknowledged that Wilhelm Reich's work was a precedent for his own. Wilhelm Reich came from Germany, came to the U.S., eventually thrown in prison. He died in the federal prison for breaking the law. But his book, Wilhelm Reich's book, he says, the interlacing of the social economic structure with the sexual structure of society and structural reproduction of society takes place in the first 4 or 5 years and in the authoritarian family. He's saying the way you're actually raising your children affect their economy, how they think economically. He says the authoritarian family becomes the factor in which the state structure and ideology are molded. He's identifying the large family in Germany. In Germany, he said, we have to destroy the large family because the large family always produces strong nationalism, because when you have 8 children, eventually, you know, we're not going to have a pity party. We don't have time to deal with your feelings. Suck it up. We got things to do. There is right and there is wrong. And he says that produces accountability, responsibility, obedience. Family relationships, Adorno, the Marxist from Berkeley, writes, are characterized by fearful subservience to the demands of the parents and by an early suppression of impulses not acceptable to them. Few parents can be expected to persist for long in educating their children for a society that does not exist, or even in orienting themselves towards goals which they share only with a minority. And then, amazing statement by Adorno, he says we have to use social environmental forces to change the parents' behavior towards the child. Have we changed our behavior towards our children? Has it worked? Yes. And then what they do is, first of all, I as a facilitator don't allow a patriarch structure in the room. You're looking for somebody to solve the problem. I don't want anybody to solve the problem. I want the group to solve the problem. And then in frustration, you will be looking for somebody. I prevent you from finding them, so you're frustrated. The third stage, you look to the group to find the order because you can't find it with me, and eventually you end up working with a group to solve the problem. It's called groupthink. What does a group think? They go on, re-education aims to change the system of values and beliefs of an individual or group to bring it in line with society at large or with reality. Whenever the re-education involves the relinquishment of standards, these are standards set by the home, which are contrary to the standards of society at large, their idea of the socialist society. The feeling of group belongingness seemed to be greatly heightened. How do I get you to work with the team? If the members feel free to express openly their very sentiments, which are to be dislodged through education. What are your sentiments? your contempt for your parents. All I have to do is get you to share your oughtabees here tonight, and you will go after your parents and God, Constitution, any higher authority, restrain you from doing your heart's desire. Let me skip through this. This is, I'm going to go through it. This is 2 sentences. Kurt Lewin sums up the home and how to destroy it. He says, the negative valence of a forbidden object which in itself attracts the child thus usually derives from an induced field of force of an adult. Let's start at the bottom. It's always easier to break this down when you start backwards. Induced field of force of an adult. What's that? That's that good old whipping if you disobey. The negative valence. What is that? The fear of being whipped. That's the conscience. Of a forbidden object. What's that? You've just been told you can't have the cookies, which in itself attracts the child. The child wants the cookies. Why doesn't the child eat the cookies the next time they go in the kitchen when you've told them not to? Because they're afraid of getting what they got the last time they ate the cookies. He just described the traditional home. Now, see how it is? It's hard to understand this stuff the first time you read through it. And they hide it. But they have to know what, you know why he did it? Because they have to know what they have to destroy. You know, you have to know the enemy. And so they've clearly defined the enemy. Then he says, this is how you destroy it. One sentence, how to destroy your legislator, the police, the military, leadership in the community, parents, the minister. If this field of force, in other words, the fear of punishment, loses its psychological existence for the child, he says, and he gives it here, if the adult goes away or loses its authority, if I'm facilitating tonight and you're looking for one person to stand up and deal with a bridge problem, because I'm not allowing it to happen, because I want 20 meetings. I want us to do group, bond. But you see, if we fix the meeting, fix the bridge, then it's one meeting and we just stay in faction, you stay neurotic. And so what I do is I prevent a patriarch from rising up so there is no authority voice in the room. He says, when that happens, the negative valence also disappears. So if I don't allow the lawgiver to rise up in the room, the law is gone. It's out of the mind. Prior to therapy, Rogers writes, the person is prone to ask himself, what would my parents want me to do? See, what would Jesus want me to do? And Jesus is saying, what does my Father want me to do? During the process of therapy, if you're in the dialectic, the individual comes to ask himself, what does it mean to me? What about me? Now, my wife and I have been doing this for 12 years. About the third year into this, I started talking to myself, what about me, Lord? What about me? You know, you can talk to God and sometimes for half a year or so and there's just nothing. And you're having this pity party. What about me? We're home 2 months out of the year. And one night he spoke to me very clear and went like this. What about you? Do the dead complain? What's baptism? Didn't you die to yourself? But you know, after baptism, then there comes the second resurrection. The self comes back to life, and that's what we have to deal with on a daily basis. We get up every morning like a child, see, and we have to ask the Lord to forgive us and get ourselves under control. See, my mom taught self-control, self-discipline. God says, humble yourself, deny yourself. It goes this way. Now we go self-esteem. Self-esteem is always group esteem. Ah, there's the French Revolution again. The effective domain, amazing statement. You can find it on page 91 in a book. You can go down to the local university, education department, pull it off the racks, and there it is. The effective domain is, in retrospect, a virtual Pandora's box. Wow. What is Pandora's box? It's a box full of evils. And once you open it up, you can't close it. We're going to destroy your children. It's in the print, in the book. This is what happened. Freud believed that the life of the body is the id. He believed all children were sexually active. And this way we had men like Kinsey. Norman Brown, again, explaining Freud and Marx. Our repressed desires are the desires we had unrepressed in childhood, and they were sexual desires. So when you restrain your children from these sexual desires, see, you're destroying their true identity. When I have homosexuals come to meetings, they will say, first of all, well, you're just too opinionated. No, I quote your guys. No, it's just your opinion. No, I quote your guys. Well, it's just your opinion. Well, no, I quote your guys. Well, it's just an opinion. See, and they want you to accept it's an interpretation, not the reality. And they'll go, well, how do you feel? What do you think? And I refuse to even go on Christian TV shows because the host will say, well, what are you complaining about? Well, I go, I'm not complaining. I'm dealing with a problem.